Hello everybody. Sorry about that. There was like a minor kind of like technical hitch between the software that I use and Facebook. So I hope that you have found us. We'll give everyone like a few more minutes to get to find us to get in the room because you were going to be able to use that link, but I've had to do it a slightly different way today. But there we go. There we go. So if you guys can hear me, looks like you can hear me. I think you can. I think you can. So today we're going to be making our vegan gluten-free scones. Yesterday we showed you how to make. I showed you how to make. There's only one of me here, right? So hello. Justine, George, Johnny, Mercedes, Lisa, Annie. I think Annie's cooking along as well. Kelly, Gloria, thank you for joining us again. Denise, can you guys hear me? So Denise said that she can't hear me. Looks like my sound is on. Melanie said that she thought it was me being dumb. I'm going to the wrong place. No. It's just like sometimes like these technical things happen, but okay, that's good. George said that the sound and video are great. So Denise, it looks like it might be a problem your end. Amy, thank you for joining us again. We'll just give a few people a bit of time to get into the room, to get into the kitchen with me, because we were going to be on this other stream and now we've had to just swap over to this one really quickly. Okay, so I think the sound is fine for the majority of you. Denise, I hope that you get that sorted out soon. We have it on maximum volume today. You'll be glad to hear. No pun intended. And Justine said, what did you say? Okay, Justine. Right, now, yesterday I showed you how to make this carrot chutney. So I know that some of you cooked along and made that, and then we're going to be making the scones to go with it. So the carrot chutney is actually a recipe that was developed by one of our students who became one of our graduates, Andrea, who's very talented. Oh, Jojo, thank you for joining us. And I wanted to show you how to make the scones to go with it, but we have like a couple of different options. And also, Andrew's recipe was slightly different to mine because I'm just kind of going to simplify mine basically and just like reduce the amount of ingredients in it just so that it's a bit easier for you guys to make. And then we've got options of savoury, spicy option, or a sweet option as well. So to anybody who doesn't know, it's National Cream Tea Day. Didn't you have that in your diary? Come on. Isn't it like a national holiday or something? Okay, so Josh said morning. Do you usually put the ingredients on the community page or other page ahead of time? Found this, then lost it. Oh, that's annoying. Okay, so what I am doing now is because I'm doing this slightly different thing where we have this kind of proper like Facebook invite, which you'll have seen over the last like 2 days, which means that people can set a reminder, which I think is like super helpful for people. So what I've been doing is I've been creating that the day before on our page, resharing it to the group, the community hub, with the ingredients list. So the ingredients list I generally only share to the group, to the community hub, within there. The only issue with the community hub, and I've definitely found this, is that when I go onto the page, I tend to see the posts where you guys have been chatting, which is lovely, by the way. So please don't stop doing that. Please don't stop doing that. I love that. I love that. Absolutely. But what it means is that you might not see the most recent post because no one's commented on it basically. But what you can do is at the top of that group you can select to see either most popular, i.e. the ones that people have been chatting on, or most recent. And then you should get to see all of them in the order that they appeared in. So, you know, it might be that Facebook is a little bit tricky, I have to admit. I mean, I am very grateful that it's given us this platform and, you know, that type of thing. But it's a bit tricky. It can be a bit tricky, and there can be things that can be hidden. And like, I definitely find it as somebody who creates on Facebook that there are things that you can do as like on your own profile that you can't do on your business page. So there are some, you know, kind of like things that you can use that you just can't when you've got a business page, or they work in a slightly different way. So, like one of my friends, Lou, actually, who comes to the group, her husband said that Facebook is like the Wild West. If you guys have like your own page or whatever, then you will know what I mean. You will know what I mean. So, so we are doing that. But moving forward, obviously, like my main goal is to get as many of you guys cooking along as possible. So we need to make sure that the ingredients list and the equipment list is advertised to you guys early enough. So we're aiming for about a week's notice. And also it's going to be in a place where you can find it, and you can find it not just once, but repeatedly. That would be ideal. Because if you're anything like me, like my memory is absolutely shocking, absolutely shocking. So we will try and come up with a way of either putting them in an album or something like that. I think that might work. You know, because it's quite easy for you guys to go to our page or go to our group and then have a look in the photo section, and then we can have different albums for different weeks. That was something that we tried before, and I think that worked quite well. So, Sue, thank you for joining us. And Denise, I think that sometimes like it looks like you guys like go out of the room and then come back in, but it's probably just a connection issue. So if I say hello to you like multiple times, then that's probably what it is. Karen, thank you for joining us again, and David. Let me just see if we've got any more questions before we get going. Justine said, I was thinking to add chocolate to the scones. You add chocolate to everything. Plus we decided they are round fluffy balls instead of scones. Okay. Is that because we don't want to mention whether we say scone or scone? Because that's just like a thing that we don't want to get into. Otherwise, we'll just have like a huge argument going on in the comment section today, and that's it. And no one will actually listen to the recipe at all. So Kelly says, how easy is this recipe to double? And then at some point divide it to do part savoury and part sweet. Okay, so that really brings me on to a very, very good point about today's recipe. So you will see in the, no, that side. No, that side. No, that side. There! See in the ingredients list. There. Yeah, our ingredients list. At the very top, it says makes 2 to 4. And the reason why that is because we've got 2 different types of scones that we can make today. In other words, like 2 different shapes. So in Andrew's recipe, she made them quite flat, as you can see here. So if you're like me, I want loads of filling, loads of topping, whatever it is that I'm making. And then the doughy thing I want less of. So if you make them like this, if you make them flatter and thinner, then it gives you the ability to do that. However, I know that some of you will want big fluffy scones. You will want big fluffy scones. So we've got options here today. So I've made a couple of batches before we got going with our live today. And so we've got one that is this thin, okay? But then, and when you make them this thin, you can get 4 out of the ingredients that we've got there. However, if you want to make them this big, that probably looks huge to you guys because it's like right now. Look, it looks like it's about to eat you. You know, if you want it to be this big, you will only get 2 out of the ingredients that I've given you. That's all. You will only get 2. Well, you get 2 and like a really tiny one, like a really tiny one. Here we go. How cute is that? I love tiny food. What is it? Is it because I'm tiny? Makes me feel big. That's what it is. That's what it is. So you guys have options. So you can make them thinner if you want to, and therefore you'll get 4 out of them. You can make them bigger, and therefore you will get 2 out of them. And so it is really, really, really easy to double this recipe. You can even quadruple it if you want to be honest. That's going to be absolutely fine. I made a lot of scones in my chef career because my first job was as a patisserie chef at a vegetarian restaurant in Brighton, and our cream teas were very, 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 very popular. So I made hundreds, if not thousands, of scones. So I will give you guys some tips as we go along to make these scones. There's a few kind of like just like technical things that you have to like watch out for, just to make the scones really really good, basically. And if you want to divide it into savoury and sweet, that's super super easy. Super, yeah, you're going to be able to do that. No problem at all, Kelly, at all. Okay. So let's me see if there are any more comments. Annie says, I'm cooking along. Good, good, good. I'm just running in and out at the moment, getting my washing units. It started raining. Oh no! Oh. Denise says, no sound on the computer, so using my phone where I have sound. Oh dear, oh dear. Best look into that after the show. Joss said, luckily, scone ingredients are pretty easy to guess and get out. Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. But we will definitely make sure that you guys can see the ingredients well in advance. But please do let me know if you can't find them. Yeah, because my ultimate goal is to get each and every one of you cooking along to one of our recipes. Okay, so I need to make sure that you guys can see the recipes well in advance enough so that you can actually go out to the shop and buy them as well. Okay, so Colleen said, can I use arrowroot as a tapioca potato starch? I did sub it the second time I made crepes. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. It might be a bit too starchy, but what you could do actually, Colleen, is increase the amount of gram flour and use like 25 grams of the arrowroot. I'm just a bit worried that the arrowroot might make it a bit too gloopy, a bit too sticky. So maybe try that. Melanie says, I'm getting subtitles. Is that normal? Not noticed before. Have I pressed something? I think we get automatic subtitles, but some people can see them on like their laptop and not on their phone, or vice versa, something like that. So Laura, thank you for joining us. And she said, find it impossible to get baking powder, potato starch and tapioca. Any tips where to look? Is that just specifically at the moment because of what has been happening, or just in general? Because I actually mainly buy from Ocado these days, and it's been an absolute godsend with what's been happening recently, and they're fine with that. They have a lot of this stuff in. There was a period where there were some things that I couldn't get, but I live in Sussex now, and Lara lives in North London, so it might just be because you're in North London and where they bring in all their stuff from. More people are buying things like that at the moment. I have no idea why everyone went a bit bonkers on baking bread. I just don't get it. Like, I don't see the connection. I really don't see the connection. Like, maybe you guys can tell me. I don't know. Catherine, thank you for joining us. And Dave, lovely to see you. Hope you're still doing those backflips. Vicky, Doug. Thanks for joining us. Joss said, could I use coconut oil instead of margarine to give it a coconut taste? Yes, absolutely. Or maybe put desiccated coconut in it. Yeah, that sounds great. Also, can I add raisins? Yeah, I'm coming over to your house. That sounds lovely. Really, really lovely. I must say, actually, with this savoury recipe, because we made the carrot chutney yesterday, the coconut would be really, really lovely in it. That's a really, really great combination for those other flavours, and the desiccated coconut as well. And actually, with yesterday's carrot chutney, I put raisins in mine, which go really well. But yes, you can put raisins in them. The only factor will be with the raisins is that because we're using gram flour, tapioca flour, it's a gluten-free scone today, or scone. Then the raisins might mean that it doesn't hold together so well. Okay, so the smaller those bits are, the better. So we do have to factor that in. Doug said that he's late today. That's okay. That's okay. We were a bit late starting. Technical issues. And Doug asked if I worked at Terra Tech. No, I did not. I did not. And yeah. One day, Doug, I will tell you about my experience of working in restaurants in Brighton, but that will be a private conversation. David, thank you for joining us again. He says, good morning, that looks so yummy. It does. We'll get started in a moment, but you guys already chatted today. Justine says, yup, you're up to your challenge is not to say scones. I can't. How can I do that today? Oh, Catherine, you're clicking along. Good. Denise says the sound's back. Great. Annie said the last time I made scones, someone thought they were rock cakes, so I'm hoping your tips will improve my scone making skills. Okay. Yes, so that is probably due to, sorry, I won't point at you. That is probably due to over mixing. So whenever we're making scones, I'm going to say it both ways just to keep everybody happy today. Then you need to make sure that you don't over mix it. So it's not like a bread dough. We don't have to like keep kneading it. The less we handle it, the better with scones. You just want to incorporate those ingredients so that they all become a homogeneous mass. And they're going to hold together, but you don't want to be kneading it at all. And usually that is the cause of them being too tough, particularly when people are using gluten flour. When you're using gluten flour, it will encourage the gluten to form, which is why we need bread. But in this case, we don't want it to be, too elastic. Because they're kind of crumbly, like scones, like they hold together, but they're kind of crumbly. They're not chewy. Okay. Colleen said nothing like a tasty rock cake. Yes, absolutely. I love rock cakes. And also, guys, if you ever anything like this happens, and you're like, oh, they are a bit like rock cakes, then just tell everyone. Yeah, I didn't want to make scones today, so I made rock cakes instead. So deal with it. Okay. Just own the rock cake, Annie. That's a sentence I never thought I would say. Doug said Justine is watching on her phone. Cheeky. Right, okay, so let's get going with our ingredients. And I'll bring you guys to the overhead cam. And then we can move our scones out of the way. So it is a really simple recipe today, and it's actually a really quite cheap recipe too. So we have our gram flour here. You can also use any kind of pea or bean flour, would work really well, but we do need something to lighten it. So we've got our tapioca flour or potato starch here. As I mentioned earlier, if you guys don't have that, I think Colleen was mentioning the arrowroot, so you could try subbing it, but I would suggest use a lot less. Colleen is quick off the mark and is already talking about what is underneath our rainbow today. I am not growing sunflowers, but that is what is underneath our rainbow. So just because it is so sunny today, this is our lovely sunflower basking in the sunshine. And this is actually for Lou. So Lou comes along to the lives every now and again, and she grows the most amazing sunflowers that are taller than her. And she's tall. She's a tall lady. But they managed to get taller than her. So that is our lovely sunflower. And also, we are struggling in the heat at the moment, and so it's quite nice to remember the birds and the bees and the flowers that are enjoying this sunshine. Okay, so Justine said, oops, I keep coming in and out. So, the internet's bad. Okay, well, are you cooking along? Let me know if you miss anything, Justine. And Emilio, thank you for joining us. Scones sounds yummy. It does. And by the way, we are saying scones and scones today, because in the UK, half the country says one way, half the country says the other. Okay, so Colleen has just asked a very good question. What are the cashews for? Right. Let me just talk you through the ingredients, and then we'll get to the cashews in a moment. Sorry, I got distracted by our lovely sunflower rainbow. Okay, so we have a good pinch of salt. So whether you are making sweet or savoury scones, do add some salt. Of course, if you are making savoury ones, you can add a bit more salt. But actually, our gram flour has a really, really lovely savouriness to it anyway. And I think that this is a really great flour to use for savoury scones. So I was eating some earlier with our carrot chutney, and the flavours go really, really, really well, really well. So any kind of bean or pea flour will be exactly the same. You know, if you think of beans and peas and any kind of like you know, Indian food, you know, they are quite good bedfellows. So therefore, you know, using a flour from them makes sense. Does go really, really well. Karen, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so we have our baking powder here. So we're going to use that, and of course I've got my gluten-free version here as well. And some margarine. So this is a pure sunflower vegan margarine. And then we have some milk. So I've got just some oat milk today, but it doesn't matter what milk it is, as long as it's, you know, some sort of plant milk. It doesn't have to be any type of specific plant milk. And with the amount, I have said in the there 60 to 80 ml of plant milk. And the reason why is, and let's just come back over here so that I can just explain to you why. Get these to demonstrate. So if we only add 60 millilitres of milk, which is also 4 tablespoons of milk, it means that the mixture will be quite thick and we can easily shape them into this. Okay, so these tall scones that we want. If we want these flatter scones that I mentioned before, that are great if you want to have maximum toppings and not so much scones gone, then add more milk. So add 80 millilitres of milk if you want them to be quite flat like this. I think for today's demonstration, we'll go with the tall ones. They do look cute. They do look cute. There is absolutely no denying that. But it's just to give you guys a couple of different options. Okay, so go back to our ingredients. And then in the next row here, we have some syrup, and we will have some hot water. Let me just pop the pan on. And this is just to make a glaze. So this will give them a really, really nice brown colour. And that is, you know, obviously kind of like ideal for a scone. We are using gram flour, so they can go a really, really nice golden colour, but this just makes that even stronger, so I did that with both of the scones that I made earlier today, and you can see really nice golden colour. And that glaze is something that you can use with loads of different recipes, absolutely loads of different recipes. And I am using a cloth today just to dab my glaze on top of my scones, but use a pastry brush if you've got one. Okay, and then onto these ingredients. So I'm going to make just a really, really quick cream cheese kind of thing to go with our cream tea. So therefore we will have all the different aspects of our cream tea. We'll have our scones, we will have our chutney, and we will have our cream. And so I'll be adding some nutritional yeast to that, and I'll be talking to you guys about like what else you can put into it to make it more flavoursome. But this is just an additional extra. It's just an additional extra, that's all. And I've just got 100 grams of cashews in here. Yeah, so you know, it's not anything that I necessarily kind of like need to write up on the ingredients list board. It's fairly easy to remember, but this is just an additional extra to make our cream tea as complete as it can be. Right, okay, Sunflower Man can go up here. There we go, and we'll get on to making our scones/scones. Right, okay, so we need a nice big bowl. Let me just see if I've missed any questions. Annie says, what syrup are you using? So this is a brown rice syrup. I really like using the syrup because it doesn't have much flavour of its own. Whereas, you know, I love date syrup, really, really love date syrup, but it does have flavour. And it also has a good colour. And in fact, you'll be using that on the course with us, Annie, so you'll get to see how date syrup actually makes a difference when we're doing something like this. So David says, what does the baking powder do? So it can help it rise a bit, basically. Yeah, thank you, Gloria, for mentioning that. Yeah, it helps it rise. And actually, it's quite a lot of baking powder to flour, but you don't taste the baking powder at all. And oh, Paul says, just joined, so apologies for being late. Don't worry. Sound seems pretty good today. Yeah, after like 90 something shows, I finally cracked it. Okay, so right, Annie says, if I'm going to add some desiccated coconut, do I need to reduce some of the flour? It depends how much you're going to add, Annie. I mean, that could just be like, I don't think you necessarily need to reduce the flour. You know, if you're just going to add, you know, a bit for flavour, then it shouldn't make much of a difference. Okay, so now let's just get started with our scones. So we've got our gram flour, our 100 grams of gram flour. So I try to make my recipes for you guys as easy to remember as possible. 50 grams of tapioca flour or potato starch. There we go. And a bit of salt. Now, if you guys do want to make this into a sweet version, then now is a really good time to add the 2 tablespoons of sugar. I would say 1 to 2 tablespoons really. But with scones, they don't have much sugar in them at all. Really, the sweetness is from the jam you would have with them. There we go. And actually, if you see, I'm actually using a fork, and the reason why I'm doing that is because it really does help me just to get any lumps out of there. Okay, and then our baking powder. So 1 teaspoon of our baking powder. Oh, sorry, I've already answered Annie's question. I thought that was a new one. So our baking powder, and just make sure that our baking powder is mixed in there really, really well. And then we've got our margarine. So 40 grams of our margarine. There we go. And using the fork again. So you can either do this with a fork or you can do it with your fingers. So if you want to do it with your fingers, then you can just massage the margarine into the flour. I've decided not to do that today because, to be honest, when I'm doing these lives, it gets a bit tricky when my hands are covered in stuff, in food. So it's kind of better for me. But usually, if I wasn't doing a live, if I was just doing this, you know, myself, then I would use my hands. But honestly, I mean, I have so much food over my phone and my laptop and my computer that, you know, trying to minimize the amount of food that gets onto these things. So this is a good way for me to do that. Okay. So it will still look quite dry. That's absolutely fine. We've got just little blobs of butter or margarine in there. Colleen says, can I use a pastry blender? So you can, but you need to make sure that you don't overmix it. Justine says, how do you not get the mixture all over the taps? I do, but then I clean the taps afterwards. Melanie said, often wondered with vegan bacon why tapioca or potato starch you use so much. Why can't you use cornstarch or corn flour? So cornstarch and corn flour, in fact, let's come over here and have a chat with you about that. So cornstarch, known in the UK as corn flour, is really quite kind of gloopy. It will add like much more kind of like starchiness and elasticity, so it would be a bit too strong for this, and that's why when we were talking about whether to sub it out for arrowroot, I said you could, but I think you have to reduce the amount of arrowroot that you put in. So yeah, you've got to take that into consideration. And the reason why It's used what I use it so much, I mean, I can only really speak for myself, is that because gram flour, I think, is such a good flour. It is accessible, it is cheap, it has a great colour to it, and it's really robust, so it's really quite a strong flour, and it can give structure, but it can be a bit on the heavy side. So something like a tapioca flour or a potato starch, it gives lightness to any type of bake, and so it will help with anything that needs to rise. If you're making something like cookies, you probably don't need it, because we don't really want them to rise. That doesn't really matter. Also, if you're making something like brownies, which we will be on the 2nd of July, do you remember? Then also it doesn't really matter about using a light flour like that. But if we want a nice light bake, so say for example like a Victoria sponge, if that was just gram flour, it would be way too heavy and it wouldn't rise enough. And so we want that light powdery flour to help make it rise, but we don't want to add too much, because what can happen, and I'm sure that some of you out there who have tried gluten-free recipes before, sometimes what will happen is if you have too much of a starchy flour, the inside can just, like, it doesn't become cake-like, it becomes kind of homogeneous and kind of gloopy, and it's really unpleasant. It's really unpleasant. It doesn't really fully cook either. It's gross. It's gross. So we do have to have this balancing between the flours. Okay, so let's just come back over here and we can finish off our scones. Sorry, scones. Sorry, I've just offended half the room. So I'm going to put just 60 ml of milk into here, because these scones are going to be the fatter. We're going to make fat scones. Okay, so it's good to pay attention to how I'm mixing this in. So I'm just trying to get it to incorporate, but I am being quite gentle with it at the same time. There we go. Okay, and now I think that I can just fold this in. And what I'm doing as well, sorry, I should describe this to you, is when I'm putting my hand into the mixture, I'm not pressing down. Okay, I'm not pressing down, because if we do that, then that will be essentially kneading our dough, and we don't want to knead our dough. We just want to bring it together. That's all we want to do. We just want to bring it together. So I am being gentle with it. Okay, so there isn't much pressure behind my hand. Colleen said, I thought you said 60 ml was for flat and 80 ml was for fat. Oh, so I'm sorry if I did. Quite possibly. So the more milk that we put in it, the more gloopy, I've got that word in my head now, the wetter the mixture will be, obviously, and then the flatter it will be. So I'm sorry if I did say that. You know what I'm like. Sometimes I do mix up words, which is really, really complicated, really difficult for you guys when you're trying to follow what I'm saying about a recipe. Okay, so just to reiterate that, let me just wash my hands. There we go. Let's come over here. I just want to make sure that you guys understand completely and that I'm being completely clear in what I say. So yeah, the two options that we had was either 60 millilitres of plant milk or 80 millilitres of plant milk. And so our flat scones had more milk in them. So that means that the dough is wetter and it will basically be flatter. Whereas with these ones, they had 60 millilitres of milk in. So the dough is thicker with these ones, much more mouldable, as you'll see in a moment. And so we can really get this height on them. But if we only add, yeah, if we only add the 60 millilitres, we would only really be able to get 2 scones out of these, depending on how big your cutter is. So I am using a glass today. It was the only thing that I had, and so this was the size that I had to make. But I actually quite like scones a little bit smaller than this. These are quite big. They're quite big. Look how big they are. Massive. So I hope that that's cleared it up. Sorry for being confusing. Okay, so as I said, really, really important that we don't overmix it, that we don't fold it or anything like that. Just bring it together. And it's also very important that we don't kind of roller it too much. We don't roller it too much. So now we have it to about, gosh, what's that? 4 centimeters? Is that 4 centimeters? Okay, I guess you guys can't really tell. About 2 inches. It's about 2 inches. And now we can cut it into our scones. And one of the most important things about scones is the way that we cut them. So you will see some guidance on the internet that says that you need to plunge your cutter into the dough. Now let me bring you guys over here so that you can see properly. Move these out of the way. Okay, and the reason why we need to plunge this into our dough, it's a little bit big still, a little bit big, so just flatten it. There you go, there we go. Okay, so the reason why we need to plunge it in is because we want these really, really, really straight cut sides. So that will allow your scone to rise more basically. If it's more kind of like a rounded edge because you've done it with your hands, it won't rise as much. So that's like one of the tips. Now I'm using a glass here, so if you're using a glass, be really, really careful. Okay, there we go, and then we've got a nice edge on there. So that's a good edge for scone/scone. There we go, really nice edge there. I'll bring you guys over here so that you can see. Right, there we go. So do you see how there are these kind of like lines in the edge? That will mean that it is easier for the scone to rise. Okay, so that is great. That's really, really good. It's more likely to rise. And as you guys will know, you know, sometimes if the flour is a bit too heavy, it can be more difficult for it to rise. So any way that we can help it out is great. It's really, really great. So I'm just bringing together the last bit of mixture that I've got. I'm trying not to handle it too much. I'm just flattening it just so that it is bigger than our cutter, because I want to be able to plunge it in and have those nice sharp edges on it. Okay. There we go. So as I said, with doing it this way, we only make 2 fairly large scones, but that's with my cutter. So if you guys have a smaller cutter than this, then I recommend that you do use one. And then we've got a little tiny baby one. There we go. And I'm just making it into a nice little scone shape using my hands. Right, there we go. And now we can get them onto our baking tray. Sorry, Annie says, my mixture is really wet with just 60 ml of milk. Shall I add a bit more gram flour? Okay, right, not sure why that is happening, Annie. Yes, you can add a bit more gram flour if you want it to be like this. If you want it to be like this. I mean, it might be that with the mixture that you've got at the moment, Annie, you end up with, you know, our flatter scones, which you might be okay with, I don't know. But if you want it like this, you are going to need to make it a bit thicker. So yes, adding gram flour would be a really, really, really good idea. Okay, so now we can pop our scones onto our baking tray. There we go, and we can pop them into the oven. So it's 180 degrees Celsius, 360 degrees Fahrenheit. I got it right today. Gas mark 4. So we'll just pop these in the oven for around like 15 minutes. Okay, so yeah, just before 1 o'clock. Just before 1 o'clock. We'll bring them out, and then we can get on to making the rest of the bits and pieces. So let's get rid of those. David says, wow, simple. Yes, absolutely. I really tried to simplify this recipe as much as possible because it doesn't need to be too complicated at all. So I hope that it encourages you guys to try making them at home. And just get rid of that, and also have a drink, and then we'll get going. Okay. Definitely need a drink today. Okay, so now on to making our glaze. Really super simple glaze. It is a glaze that gives quite a strong effect, but that can, you know, that's what I want today. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make the glaze with 2 parts hot water to 1 part rice syrup. If you want a darker glaze, then you could use date syrup that I mentioned earlier. So date syrup has almost like a kind of mauve colour, like a deep red, but that can look really pretty and really dramatic if that's what you want. So we've got our pan that's just been keeping warm over here, and so we can make this now. It will be another kind of 15 minutes before we actually put them onto our scones, but that's absolutely fine. So I'll put in 2 teaspoons of hot water and 1 teaspoon of our brown rice syrup. There we go. And syrup is better to use than sugar. It will have a better outcome. And then we'll just mix it in. There we go. So we just need to make sure that that is just melted into the water, and then we can pop that to one side. And as I said, I don't have pastry brush at the moment, and I'm really trying to do without the things that I don't have at the moment, because I've got plenty of pastry brushes, just they're up at the school. So I'm going to use a cloth instead, and so I'll just dab that onto the scones when they're ready. So if you want to put a glaze on anything, then you just put the glaze onto it about 5 minutes before it's ready from the oven. So, you know, if you want to make like pastries, or, you know, you want a better glaze on like some bread, rolls or something like that, then about 5 minutes before it's due to come out of the oven, whip it out, give it a brush, and then pop it back in, okay? Because it does need to cook out. The glaze does need to cook to actually like get more of a kind of visible glaze on it. Okay, so Denise says, could I use maple syrup, or would that be too sweet? No, that'd be fine. That'd be fine. To be honest, like you're not going to get much flavour from this anyway. You're really not, because it's not a thick. You know, it's really thin. It's really thin. I mean, it's sugary water basically. That's what it is, syrupy water. So it's not going to be a thick thing at all. So you're not going to get much sweet flavour from it. It's just about look. That's all it is. Just about look. Okay. And Catherine says that mine is quite wet with 60ml, but I'm just going with it. Okay. And Karen says you're cracking me up with the multiple pronunciations. This is going to be a new word. It's going to be like, you know, the person who wants to sit on the fence has to say scones. This is a new word, scones. I know you want to be inclusive, but forget that you can't. Okay, and Coco. Why am I calling you Coco? You're Jojo. I'm reading your sentence at the same time as reading your name, Jojo. Sorry. Jojo says, what about coconut sugar? It's things like rice syrup here are mega expensive. I would try it. I would just try it and see how it is. You just need to make sure that all of the grains are, you know, completely melted. You know, that's all. I think that would be the only difference. Okay, so and now we can get on to making our cream that will go on the side of it. And I haven't given you guys ingredients to that because this is just like a last minute thing that I thought, actually, to make this whole thing complete, it would be great if we had some sort of cream. So here I have my my cashews, and cashews do make a really, really lovely cream. They are the creamiest of nuts, I think, or the creamiest of nuts that are widely available, shall we say. And so I soaked these for about half an hour in boiling hot water. So I don't boil them. I know some people like to boil them, but I just pop them into a bowl with some water that has just boiled, and just let them soak for at least about half an hour, something like that. And so I'll just get rid of the water from these and then pop them into our jug or some sort of high-sided bowl. But you want a receptacle that holds everything kind of tightly and in place. Oh, Joe just said liquid coconut sugar. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. That would be a great sub. Virginia! Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Colleen says, I'm sorry, I missed the measurement for the cashews. Yeah, so Colleen, I mean, don't worry about this one too much because I just put 100 grams in there. And the only reason that I did that is because I know that the blender needs enough to be like to help it work, basically. If we ask our hand blender here, my trusty companion, to blend a really small amount, then inevitably it can't churn that around. And really we want to get this mixture churning around as much as possible. So with blenders, if we can get those mixtures churning around, then that's really going to help everything blend. So if it's too small amount, then it's really going to struggle with that. So sometimes we do have to make more than we actually need for a recipe, like in this case. And also with this, I'm going to try and make it as thick as possible. And that can be quite hard on the blender as well. It is possible. It is absolutely possible. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to show this with you guys, because I know with a lot of my students, you know, when I'm asking them to do this, they'll start blending, they'll be like, no, it's not working. It's not working. You know, I've been doing it for a minute and it's not working. And that's because actually persistence is key with this, because if you keep doing it, if you keep blending it, it will eventually concede and they will blend and you will get a really, really lovely creamy texture. But we do want to minimize the amount of water because we want this to be quite thick cheese, because, you know, it's going to be kind of mimicking our like clotted cream that we would put onto a scone. And if any of you guys have had clotted cream in your pre-vegan life, then you know that it is incredibly thick. It is incredibly thick. So we're looking for a really thick cream. And you know, we could, if we were making a thinner cream, then we could just use like the NutriBullet or the Nutri-Ninja or, you know, something like that, and that would be fine. But because we're making a thick one, the NutriBullet would struggle as well. It really would struggle. So we're going to do it this way. Okay, so now we need to get a bit of water, and you only need a small amount. It doesn't have to be much at all. So I'll just get a glass with some water. And some people like to add milk to these things, you know, whatever plant milk they want. But actually, there's enough creaminess in the cashews that you don't need a milk. You don't need a milk. It won't make much difference, and you know, it's much cheaper to use water than it is to use milk. So we'll add a good dash of salt into here. And we've got our nutritional yeast, but we won't add that yet. Okay, I'm glad that you guys like my pronunciation of scones. They are soaked, the cashews. Yes, I just soaked them in some very hot water. So I didn't boil them. There we go. And Kelly said I have macadamia nuts here. Nice. Macadamia nuts are lovely. I mean, you need to take a mortgage out on your house to afford them. But yeah, if you've got them, then do use them. Jojo said it would also be awesome with whipped coconut cream. Yes, that would be lovely. That would be lovely. Oh no, and Annie says, I think I'm going to have a scone disaster again. No, really? Okay, let's troubleshoot that one afterwards. Colleen said, can you add the water that the nuts were soaked in? I actually like to get rid of that. And the only reason why is because, so in the raw food world, and I think some of you are familiar with that, so you will know what I'm talking about. Quite often they would say about this thing of soaking nuts, and then it gets rid of digestive enzyme inhibitors that are in the nuts. So apparently it's something that nuts have that kind of shields them against being eaten too much, because nuts actually, they don't want to be eaten, they want to grow into, you know, whatever plant they actually are. So they have these digestive enzyme inhibitors, yeah, which can make you have a poorly tummy. Apparently. To be honest, I've eaten a lot of nuts in my life and I have really weak digestion and I haven't noticed any difference, but there we go. So when we soak them, apparently all of those inhibitors like go into the water, and you know the water is cloudy anyway, so I get rid of that water, and it's just, you know, just in case there is those digestive inhibitors, and just because it looks a bit cloudy, it's not that nice. So I do freshen up that water and use, so I fully drain it and then add fresh water. So that's why I do that, but that's just kind of like a habit thing. You know, so you know, if you want to use the water that it's been soaked in, then that's absolutely fine. Okay. Jim, thank you for joining us. And Justine says mine always end up thin. Don't know what you're talking about. Okay, right. So I'm just going to add a splash of water just to get it going, and then we'll see how we're doing and if we need to add more water as we go. Okay, so it's already blending down really well, and that's because I soaked it. Oh, Gloria says that's interesting. I love nuts, but cashews can make my tummy ache. Yes, I think for some people they can, and it can be very easy to eat too many of them. Definitely. Okay, so it's already blending quite well, and I'm going to be tilting the hand blender just to encourage the mixture to move around. So this is the type of thing that you can't just put the blender in like this and then turn it on and expect it all to go round. Not going to work. It's really not going to work. Okay, so you need to help it out. So this is going to need a little bit more water, but as I said, I'm adding little bits at a time. Okay, and so the more we blend it, the thicker it gets, okay, because we are breaking down all of those nuts. So yeah, the more that we blend it, the thicker it will get. So whilst it may have gone round very well at the beginning when I added that last drop of water, now it's getting thicker, it will need a little bit more water. So Annie says, I use icing sugar in my scone mix as the sugar element. Do you think that's why it was quite wet? Maybe, yeah, quite possibly. Okay, so now we'll add a bit more water. And actually, so yeah, Annie, but you might just get like the flatter scones. Or you may have invented something completely different and you just like, you know, made your first like recipe development project, which is awesome. So yeah, but how was the mixture? Because you said that it's very wet, but were you able to make rounds with it? Was it okay like that? Okay. Right, let's just get on to the last bit of this. So it's already getting quite creamy, but we do need to be persistent with it and just tilting it to one side, encouraging the mixture to go round as much as possible. there we go. Sorry for the noise, guys, but now this is really lovely and creamy because we have just persisted with blending it. Annie says, did you just laugh at my chef blunder then, Chef Day? No, what I laugh about is that quite often, like, people will like try out recipes from our website, and they'll get in contact with me and say, your recipe didn't work. Like, why didn't it work? And I'll be like really stressing and worrying because I hate the thought that somebody has like gone to all the effort to make a recipe of mine. They have spent money on ingredients. They have spent their precious time as well, and then it didn't work. And I feel awful, absolutely awful. And then like we'll dig into it, and then eventually they'll say, oh yeah, but like I swapped out that ingredient for that other ingredient. And I'm like, okay, well that's why it didn't work. That's why it didn't work. And so yes, that's why I'm laughing, because I get really panicky like when people's recipes don't work when you know they're following one of my recipes. So it's more kind of relief really. But I think that Annie, you will have created something wonderful, definitely. Okay, so Denise has quite rightly said that the scones should be done. So let's have a look in the oven. Let's pop a tea towel down on here. Oof. It is not a day to be baking, guys. Not a day to be baking at all. Okay, so these are at a good stage now where we can pop our glaze on. There we go. So I'll just dip my cloth. If you guys have a pastry brush, then please do buy a pastry brush. Sorry, do use a pastry brush. It's me that should buy a pastry brush. I'm so bad at things like this though. Like, you know, I would rather kind of like make, do and mend as much as possible. So if I can figure out other ways of doing such things in the kitchen. There we go. So fully dabbed with our glaze, and then these can go back into the oven for another 5 minutes. Oh, well actually I think it's going to be about 5 to 10 minutes, guys, so we're probably not going to get to see those ones get to the end of their journey, but we can use these ones. And so that is actually one thing that I need to say to you guys. Of course, like, it depends on how big your scones are, how fat they are, and also how wide they are. So the fatter they are, the wider they are, the longer they'll need in the oven. Okay, but you can give them a feel. So there should be a little bit of give, just the same as like when you're making a cake, you know, and you press it, but then it springs back. Really similar to that. So now we can finish off our cashew cream, and you guys can add whatever flavours you want to this. So I've decided to keep mine fairly simple, and the reason why is because we have this lovely carrot chutney that has loads of flavour, like absolutely tons of flavour. And actually that reminds me to say to you guys, you know, I have given you options as well to make your scones more spicy. So with Andrew's recipe, she also added garam masala, grated ginger, fresh chilies, and fresh coriander. So you guys can do that if you want to. You know, it does make them look very pretty. Let's just go back over to the picture, and then you'll be able to see like those lovely different coloured flecks, like the red and the green in it, look really beautiful, really pretty. But I decided not to do those today because, you know, otherwise we'll be here for hours. We'll be here for hours. Okay, so Justine says, how do you cope with the heat in the kitchen? That's about it. I've got a washcloth in the freezer waiting for me for after the show. Gloria says, you'll hate my kitchen. I've got a tool for every job. I've even got a melon baller I bought just in case I need it. There was something I wanted to make with a melon baller actually. I can't remember what it was. Oh yes, that's it. Cucumber cups. So you know, you take like big chunks of cucumber, big fat slices of cucumber, and then use a melon baller to scoop out the middle, and then you can put stuff in the middle, and it's like a cucumber vol au vent. So we'll have to make those together. Okay. Oh, Jojo says, yeah, you should try cooking here in Thailand. Oh my gosh, that must be quite something. Okay, right. So now I'm just going to add some nutritional yeast. You guys can add as much as you want or as little as you want. It's completely up to you. This is a real like choose your own adventure. Cream, and also you can add things like a bit of white miso if you want to, some garlic powder, some onion powder, some black pepper, some white pepper, like yummy. It's really quite straightforward and simple, that one. But as I said, like we've got this carrot chutney from yesterday here, so there's a lot of flavour in this, okay, so let me just see if we've got any questions. Catherine says I use xylitol. Maybe that's not a good combo for gram flour. Maybe. I know it's like I did use xylitol briefly, but I didn't really get on with the flavour of it. So I don't know enough about it actually to be able to advise you on that. So sorry. Justine says I'm gonna make a scone milkshake later. That doesn't sound like great. I'm sure it'll be lovely. Annie says, look, don't moan, it's cold and dull and rainy in South Wales. In Wales, sorry. Yeah. But, I mean, I lived in Malaysia for quite a while. And, oh my gosh, the humidity. And, yeah, cooking in that heat. Although I must say, Malaysia does air conditioning extremely well. So, we did have air conditioning. But yeah, the humidity was crazy. Okay, so now we're going to make up our scone. And so I'm just going to do one on a plate here, 1/2. And I think it was Gloria yesterday who said that the jam goes on first, which means that our chutney will go on first. And Colleen has asked, so this is a savoury cream. Yes. So the cream that I'm making is to go with our carrot chutney. So I'm making it savoury. But if you guys want to make it sweet, then just make it sweet. Absolutely no problem. I mean, with cream, and in fact, let's just come over here and talk about cream and cream teas. Cream that you have with a cream tea, it isn't sweet. So, as I said earlier, the sweetness is really from the jam in a cream tea. The scone might have a small amount of sugar in it, may not have any sugar in it whatsoever. Really, the sweetness is from the jam, which obviously can be incredibly sweet, so we don't really need it. What we want from the cream is the creaminess. So, it isn't like a massively sweet, like it's not like a kind of like cake or a dessert or anything like that. It isn't that level of sweetness. It's creaminess and sweetness, and then this kind of like doughiness as well. But if you want to, and I've been known to add a little bit of syrup, probably like syrup rather than sugar, to my cashew creams. I made one the other day when we were having the cobbler. Yeah, so I made a cardamom cashew cream to go with the cobbler, and I put a little bit of syrup in it just to kind of balance out the spices, because sometimes when you add spices, it kind of needs something else. Okay. Catherine says, do you mean nooch in the cream? Yes, I put some nutritional yeast in my cream, just because we're going on this kind of like savoury thing. But you guys can flavour it whatever way you want to. Okay, so let's load up our scone. And with the carrot chutney that I made yesterday, I actually kept it quite dry. I cooked it out until it was quite dry, and it actually made it. Sorry, I'm just eating all the bits that fall on the countertop. That's how nice it is. And I purposefully wanted it to be quite dry because it's a lot easier to bottle. But of course, you can add a bit of water once you've bottled it. So we'll just add some of our carrot chutney, and I did add some fruit as well after the show, because we mentioned that in the show, didn't we? That some dried fruit would go really, really well. There we go. And so when I pop this onto my scone, I am just making a small indentation There we go. Oh, and a word of warning, if you are planning to make the carrot chutney, it's spicy. Spicy. Oh, Glory says clotted cream is made by scalding and setting it on shallow pans over warmth. That's interesting. I find information like that interesting because it helps me to possibly make a vegan alternative. And when I was working at the Monkey Sanctuary in Cornwall, that's the story for another time. We were doing vegan cream teas, and so we did actually make a vegan clotted cream, but it was basically just a combination of tofu tea, cream cheese, and margarine. That was it. That was it. I think maybe we might have added a bit of vanilla in there as well, but that was it. Okay, so there we go. This is our lovely savoury scone with carrot chutney and our cashew cream on top. Lovely, lovely. Gloria says, was it in Lou? Yes, it was. It was the one in Lou. Okay, so let's see how our scones doing. Bring them over for a quick squeeze before we will shoot off. There we go. Now I can turn the oven off. There we go. So there we go. I actually quite like that one turned out in a bit of a spiral. Okay, so actually one thing to say as well, guys, is that when you are cutting your scones, there is a really, really good way of doing it where you're not going to make it crumble apart. Because, you know, when it's like the second one and we've brought the dough back together, they can have these kind of crevices in, which means that they can crumble apart if we're not careful when we cut into them. Okay, so the best thing to do is to lay your hand flat on the top, get a serrated knife, and then cut round the edge, but keep going all the way around, turning the scone, and then lift the top off. Okay, so rather than just cutting it all into it in one go, and that will help it hold together better. Okay, guys, so let me just see if we've got any more questions. And I think that's it for today. Thank you for hanging out with me for such a long time. I know that this was like quite a long one today. Tomorrow I will be making this recipe, which is a salad niçoise. So a good change from the heat of today. We've got a lovely salad niçoise. I'll be sharing the ingredients later, but it is using some braised tofu, which I know might be really difficult for you guys to get hold of, but it is an ingredient I think is really, really underused. So I wanted to show you guys a recipe with it and how it can be used, because I think the more people that buy it, the more it will actually like keep on our shelves and maybe be stocked by supermarkets. But it's a really, really good type of tofu. So that's our braised tofu. It comes in cans. Maybe some of you guys have used it before. So before I get in trouble with Denise, I'm gonna have a try of this, but it's gonna be messy. So don't judge me. I even managed to get it on my nose. See, in high tea is meant to be like so dainty and pretty and like something you have at the Ritz. Not on my watch. Not on my watch. There we go. Right. Okay. Thank you so much for your company today. Brilliant as always. I hope that those of you who have cooked along, that your recipe is going okay. Please do let me know how it's going. Pictures would be great as well, as always. Jojo says, have you made vegan cheese at all? I may have missed it here. We've actually got vegan cheese in one of our online courses. So if there are things that we've got in our online courses, then I tend not to show them on the lives. But yes, we have some classes in vegan cheese. We do. Yes, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Karen said you're amongst friends. Yeah. Yeah. So you don't mind that it just ends up everywhere. Good, good, good. Okay. So thank you for your company and your time and your fun and your love. And do have, as always, a really, 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 really lovely day.